How often do you view pornography? What do you look for? Special categories, perhaps? Fetishes? Abuse? A growing number of men and women regularly consume content of an adult nature on the internet. It's ubiquitous and often freely available. Increasingly, evidence shows there is an appetite amongst consumers for the depiction of violence and abuse. But often, participants do not engage in these acts willingly. They are often victims of human trafficking, and they have little power to resist what they are being made to do. Even more worryingly, some of them, many of them, are children. The inaugural Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation Africa conference is starting today and it will run until Thursday. One of the key speakers joins us now on the line, and we've spoken to him before, and it's always a pleasure to have you back on the show. He wears many hats, right? He's the director of the Research Institute at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in Washington, D.C. He's a former member of SAPS. He's a hostage negotiator and an investigator attached to the Hawks, especially their sexual offences unit. Dr. Marcel van der Walt, thank you so much for your time this morning once again.
Good morning, Bongani. Just a FYI, those policing roles was a former, right? Not anymore.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's talk. How big a problem is human trafficking in the creation and use of pornography?
Well, Bongani, a sleeping giant is waking up in terms of awareness, just knowledge that this is truly, truly rife. And unfortunately, over the years, many concerns has been dismissed or rationalized. Even some talk shows here in South Africa where people will call in and say, hey, but something doesn't look okay with that person looking drugged up and looks too young. But on a global platform, we see massive pornography sites like Pornhub crumbling, and a huge South African following on the Pornhub arena. So it's a big problem, Bongani.
How prevalent is the victimization of children?
Well, online, offline, we already know the offline or in-person exploitation of children, but it's increasingly moving online. We all know the exponential growth that we talk about the African continent, access to technology. We see skyrocketing reports of image-based sexual abuse where children, it could be self-generated images, or it could be images generated by a third party, and that stuff being uploaded online. And then there's the incredible headache and trauma of trying to remove that content from the internet. We talk about a digital tattoo. Once it's on there, it's very, very difficult to get it up. And the content, child sexual abuse material, is increasing exponentially, Bongani.
And I understand now the depiction of violence and abuse is in some demand.
Huge demand. I mean, there was a nationally representative sample of women and men aged between 18 and 60 years old in the United States, and they reported that within their lifetime, now remember, it's a national representative sample, 62% of men and 40% of women consume pornography showing gangbangs, to more extreme content like rape-themed content, 21% men, 11% women, and 30% of men and 22% of women who consume pornography depicting someone pressuring another person to do something that they did not want to do. Then we're not even talking about incest theme, bestiality, or sex with animals, coprophilia, europhilia. It's getting extreme by the day, Bongani.
Why do you think users, consumers of this type of content have become so desensitized?
Well, I think there's many reasons. I mean, one of the one of the issues that comes to mind is the issue of cognitive scripts, but also the evidence that people are increasingly searching for more hardcore, more extreme content, and there's neurological explanations for that. Where people become numb, it's always looking for that next dose of dopamine, which is prompted by more extreme content, especially with high volume pornography users. So we do see that, and you do have experience of people, where they share that it becomes incredibly inhibiting, and people becoming non-functional. It really inhibits every area of their life, and they just they can't go without this stuff. So many studies that's increasingly unveiling harms to the brain. We know 15, almost 16, more than 15 states in America that's declared this a public health risk. And I think we need to look at this in our context as well.
Can consumers of this get away with thinking that, well, hang on, these are actors, these are performers, they've agreed to participate in these scenes, in this type of depiction, presumably they're remunerated for what they do. Can people tell themselves that to be okay with what they watch?
No, no longer, Bongani, no longer can you argue that. I mean, these websites like Pornhub, MindGeek, Xhamster, no age verification. There's no measures in place to make sure that it's consensual, whatever that word means nowadays, stuff that's being uploaded onto these websites. And so no, there's no excuse. I think a time has come where we need to grapple and confront the reality that it's very difficult to verify whether a person is an adult or a child. We know teens. The word teens is one of the highly searched keyword searches for pornography out there, and it's and everybody's consuming this. And the other interesting dynamic and new trend is that we're finding an increasing number of women consuming this content as well.
Do you have any confidence in South Africa's anti-trafficking abilities? I mean, what are the challenges for successful prosecutions of people who are guilty of all of this?
Yeah. Well, let me just first put this out there. I have immense confidence in our law. The law has proven itself to be a sharp prosecution tool. I continue to testify in these cases where this law is used very efficiently by prosecutors. The problem comes in with getting those cases into the criminal justice system. We know that SAPS, in the recent research that we've done, they have in excess of 10,000 reports on the CAS system, only in a number of 5 or 6 years that's been reported to them. So there's a massive disconnect between perceptions out there, cases being reported, and successful prosecutions. We still we haven't reached the 50 mark in successful prosecution in South Africa. And that's deeply worrying and unsettling when we consider what we now know after this recent research study is a massively undercounted issue in South Africa. And unfortunately, researchers has not done a very good job. Many research studies don't even use the legally binding definition of human trafficking when they do their studies. And what happens is research participants are actually misinformed about their own lived experiences because the researchers don't use definitions correctly, which by implication means undercounting of the problem.
How important is it then to amplify the voices of victims?
That should be front and center, Bongani, of what we do, and not just amplifying their voices for virtue signaling as a government official, amplifying it in policy, in law reform, getting voices of survivors in the broader conversation around issues of gender-based violence. The problem is we continue to address these issues as if they exist in own private universes, Bongani. We often have gender-based violence conversations, but we don't talk about sex trafficking. We don't talk about women and children that's being exploited in the sex trade, and we continue to refer those within the ambit of consensual adult sex work. So there's big problems, and I think two things we need to use definitions, which is legally binding. We can't use opinion or construct our only social constructed definitions of phenomena. And until we are unanimous and committed to using legally binding definitions, we're going to continue to undercount issues of sex trafficking amongst phenomena like pornography, like gender-based violence, and like prostitution.
All right, appreciate your time, Dr. Marcel van der Vat, there talking to us. And of course, it is that summit, the End of Sexual Exploitation and Human Trafficking Summit, that begins today and it's running until Thursday.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.